like to welcome the witnesses today. Thank you very much for being here and imparting your wisdom on us. I'd like to talk specifically about the Social Security system, it's CLOP, correct? The disability case processing system. I understand in 2008 we undertook a very large project to consolidate, I think it was 54 fragmented custom systems, which we see a lot of this across government, and this is good to get rid of these customized fragmented systems into one system. I also understand we've spent to date over $400 million on this project. I'm from Iowa, and in Iowa $400 million is a lot of money. So first of all, Mr. Klopp, I'd like to have you give me an update on the status of this effort. Where are we at?
Sure. So in about 2010, we made the decision that this project was, we'll say, too big for our IT staff to execute, and so we did a competitive bid and outsourced the development of the system to Lockheed Martin and their partner, Micropact. They worked on this for several years. About the time I came in, it became clear to me that this was off track pretty badly. They had already spent about $300 million.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just in your professional estimation, how can it be off track when we're talking about that kind of money?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. I think how it gets off track is in this particular case, I think that they just were off track from the beginning. I think the way they were trying to solve the problem fundamentally was broken. And look, I mean, I'll be really clear. I think that for this to have gone as far as it did, is a gigantic execution problem with our contractors, and also a problem in oversight. We should never have let it go so far before we stopped it. I came in as CTO originally. I took a look at the architecture, suggested some
if I could ask, what happened to the previous CIO?
The previous...
I assume they were terminated since
No.
it was off track?
No, the previous CIO was not terminated. I think that there was some shuffling around within our oversight group as people were sort of slapped for not overseeing this right. You know, I mean, to be honest, there's a variety of places where oversight might have come from, and I think there was failure across the board there. So the previous CIO was not fired as a result of this failure, but I don't.
Was he promoted?
No.
Do you know if he was was he given a bonus?
No longer at the agency. Yeah, I don't know about that. That all happened before I came. So all I can say is, you know, with that regard, is I came in, saw it was off track, established some very objective engineering level criteria to be able to demonstrate that the software that was being built was fundamentally broken. When in fact it was proven it was fundamentally broken, we shut the project down. We were still left with the problem that you identified, which is we had 54 disparate systems that ran on green screens. It was just terrible. So in October we started a new project, which we call DCPS2, extremely modern, deployed in the cloud.
October, what year are we talking about?
Last year.
Just last year?
Yeah, or a year ago in October. Yeah, so we've been at it for a little over a year.
So this started in 2008, and in 2015?
We shut it down and started
over after 7 years?
That's correct.
And how many hundreds of millions were spent, would you estimate?
I believe that we spent $340 million up to the point that we shut it down.
That's breathtaking.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Right.
But I'm sorry, continue. What is the status?
So the new system is now moving along at a proper pace. Currently, our run rate is about $25 million a year, so far less than these kinds of numbers that you heard before. We will deploy our first production release to the DDSs in December, so there will actually be cases running through this thing, so we're well past all of this, is it going to work, is it not going to work, that kind of stuff. And we believe that we're on the right path, and in fact what we really believe is that that we're demonstrating, I think, in a really profound way that using the kind of modern software development techniques and cloud infrastructure that we would hope to be able to use over and over and over again if Chairman Hurd's bill gets through everybody. I think that this proves that we can modernize, and the cost of modernization is a fraction of these $100 million projects. We will complete this project for significantly less than the money that was burnt last time.
When's your estimation of when it will be complete?
You know, that's an interesting question. One of the odd things about agile software development, which is what we do these days, is that really we view these things not as projects anymore, but as products. And like any product, we would continuously improve the product. As technology changes, we would just try to incorporate those changes. And so the way we look at it is more of a question of, is the $25 million a year run rate that we spend on this, is it worth spending another $25 million next year for the enhancements that we can see in the backlog? So we view this thing as a product development, not as a project that will have an end.
I'm from the private sector. One thing that's very frustrating is in Washington, D.C., there seems to be no penalty for failure. In fact, the answer usually to failure is let's spend more money. We're not spending enough of the taxpayer money. And the money that we have wasted prior to you coming to the agency is absolutely stunning. It's breathtaking. This is what people are tired of. Is there a Phase 1 document done on the design of the system that people sign off on? Lockheed Martin, your contractor signs off on, people in government sign off on, and say this is what we want built, and everyone agrees to it. Is there a document that's created before the first piece of code is programmed?
Yeah, so I believe the first time through there was a detailed description of what needed to be built, right? I wouldn't call that an architecture document. The architecture and execution of building around those requirements was under the control of the contractors. So what we did is very clearly specify what we wanted them to build, and then there was an execution problem in actually getting that built.
Because we need accountability. Either the contractors made a mistake and we shouldn't pay them, which would happen in the private sector, or the government officials who signed off in the agency made a mistake and they should be terminated. One or the other needs to be accountability, as I would think you would agree.
Yeah, so I would agree that there should be some accountability. The contract with Lockheed Martin and Micropact was terminated. That was probably the best that we could do. I guess I will say, in the defense of the federal workers that have to be responsible for this, is it's sort of tough if the program basically punishes them for failure but doesn't really reward them much for success. So.
And it's not the federal workers that are the problem. It's the people at the very top, typically, or the contractors, one or the other. But do you have a private sector background, by the way?
Yeah, I came just a couple of years ago just to try to help out for a few years.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck to you, and we'll be checking back in to see how the progress is. Thank you for your testimony. I'm over my time, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.